Hi everybody, welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. I hope you're all safe and well. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Mohamed ElSayed, who is the Research Fellow, Platform Leader, Oral Peptide Delivery at Eli Lilly and Company. And he is speaking today at the Oxford Global Formulation Delivery US Virtual Summit on the oral delivery of peptides. So that's quite a lot to get through in one breath. Assalamu alaikum, Mohamed. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing this one?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for taking the time out to speak to me before your presentation. I know it's quite early in the morning where you are, so thank you for getting up early and sorting this interview out with me. Before we start talking about your presentation, perhaps we can give the viewers a little bit of an idea of your background, actually, and your research interests.
Sure. So I am a pharmaceutical scientist by background. So my undergraduate degree is actually in pharmacy from Cairo University, and I pursued my Ph.D. at the University of Maryland in Baltimore in pharmaceutical sciences with emphasis on drug delivery, metabolism, and pharmacodynamics. So in the heart of all of my training is pharmaceutical sciences and drug delivery. Over the past 25 years, I have been fortunate to have roles involved in academia as well as in the pharmaceutical industry. So in academia, I was a research fellow at the University of Washington in Seattle in bioengineering. And then after that, as a faculty, going through the different ranks through tenureship and professorship at the University of Michigan in biomedical engineering. But at the same time, I was fortunate also to serve as consultant for different pharmaceutical and biotech companies, landing most recently, I would say, over the last 5 years, when I joined Lilly to establish the oral peptide delivery platform. And I've been there over those 5 years, working in that particular area of research.
Fantastic. Now, one thing, obviously, everybody has been impacted by COVID over the last 9 months. And obviously, particularly in research, people have been in lockdown. So have you been able to carry on doing your research and your work through this very difficult period?
So definitely COVID and the pandemic situation that we had is disruptive and disrupted many elements of our life. And doing research in a pharmaceutical company is no exception in this case. So definitely came with its own elements of disruption. So it slowed many of the programs down. However, I would say it also catalyzed quite a bit of activity and quite a bit of research in the area of identifying new diagnostic tests, identifying new treatments, and even the generation of vaccines, which is obviously everywhere in the news being discussed and studied. If there is a positive thing that came, in my opinion, came out of that COVID-19 pandemic is the ability to actually focus on a global level on a problem like the COVID-19 infection and accelerating the discovery of different types of treatments, ranging from acceleration of discovery, development, and FDA approval or regulatory approval of diagnostic testing, also accelerated discovery of treatments, including antibodies for convalescent patients, accelerated discovery and development of vaccines, which are going through different stages of clinical development with different platforms. So when you zoom out and take a look, within 7 to 8 months, the whole world put forward an unprecedented innovation outcome to facilitate collectively come up with a way that combat that particular disease. So I would say, as a researcher, I am very proud of what we as a community have been able to do. And Lilly actually contributed to that. It's in the public news. We contributed to the development of this diagnostic kits for the disease. And we also have our own programs in clinical development looking at antibodies treatment for COVID-19 symptoms. But on the local level, on the day-to-day operations, obviously came some elements of disruption as well.
Yeah, I mean, have you now then used a greater use of technology in your own work now? And are you using more AI or sort of other forms of digital ways of working than you were using previously?
Those have always been integrated as part of our day-to-day activities and as part of the discovery paradigm.
Right.
I would say that COVID-19 and the work remotely um, emphasized the need to rely on more communication technologies like the ones that allow us to connect now. So there's more reliance on that, definitely, to get
Right.
things going.
Brilliant. Well, let's talk about your presentation today at the
Sure.
Formulation Delivery Series. So you're presenting on the oral delivery of peptides. So what is their significance and the value and interest in that particular area? Why is that so important?
Sure. So peptides present a unique class of molecules. Those peptides are driven from amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. So if you are chewing on a hamburger or some sort of meat, those are the building blocks of proteins, those amino acids. Now, the beauty of those particular molecules that they can engage multiple targets and they exhibit unprecedented therapeutic activity.
Right.
But understandably, they are not suitable for different methods or routes of administration. So for the last 4 or 5 decades, all of the large molecules, including peptides, have been administered by a form of injection, either intravenous injection, intramuscular injection, subcutaneous injection. And that invasive mode of administration provides a barrier to adoption by many patients. Patients often, if you ask patients and do a survey, 9 out of 10 at least will tell you they prefer an oral tablet or capsule over an injection.
Sure.
However, the delivery of those molecules via the oral route has been rather challenging and elusive for several decades. So we are trying to reconcile the high therapeutic potential of peptides and combine it with the flexibility and higher patient adoption and compliance of the oral. That's the significance or the motivation for trying to come up with platforms that can deliver peptides for.
Right. And are there any approved oral peptide drugs currently on the market?
There is the first oral peptide that got approved by the FDA in September of last year is called Rybelsus. It's a product of Novo Nordisk, and it's used for treatment of type 2 diabetes. And that represents the combination of close to 2 decades of intensive research by Novo. So kudos to them for actually sticking behind it and getting all the way through regulatory. And that presents the first one, but there are multiple others that are following in different stages of clinical development.
Right. And what challenges are hampering the development of additional drugs in this area?
Sure. So as I shared and I gave the example about the ingestion of proteins in general, proteins and peptides are not designed to be stable in the gastrointestinal tract. So they end up being chewed in the stomach and the small intestine, and therefore they cannot be absorbed easily from the small intestine to reach the blood circulation and therefore exhibit the therapeutic activity. So you have that anatomical/physiological barrier of the gastrointestinal tract working against you in this case. So to overcome that, you have to invest quite a bit in the appropriate design of the molecule to be stable in those environments, hostile environments, and also come up with formulations that can improve the absorption of the peptide from the gastrointestinal tract to get it into the blood circulation. So that's the reason why there is quite a bit of activity, but there are significant challenges to be overcome, but there is progress in this particular space as well.
Great. Okay. And if you're looking further ahead, what would you see are the potential next wave of innovations in this particular area?
So innovation happens in sort of like cycles. I would say right now, the bulk, if you look at the programs that are going through clinical development, they rely on what I call it formulation enablement, where you mix the peptide with excipients that can transiently open the wall of the small intestine or open the wall of the stomach and allow the peptide to be absorbed. And that in itself is a significant advancement compared to where we were a few years back. Okay, if we can do that effectively, safely, and gain the regulatory approval to put those medicines in the hands of the patients, that in itself is the next frontier to make formulation enablement of peptide delivery a reality for multiple peptides. I would say that's the first wave of innovation. The second one that I think is coming directly behind it is the idea of ingestible devices. There are few players in that particular space who are in academic settings as well as in the biotech space that are trying to think of ways to miniaturize needles and fit them into a capsule that can be taken orally. And the idea here is the same way you inject the drug sub-Q with a needle. Now you have this needle into a capsule and designed to inject the peptide or the drug directly into the wall of the small intestine. And when you do that, you can achieve the same level of delivery efficiency like a parenteral, like a sub-Q injection, but you achieve it via the oral route. Now, when you put it in a cartoonish way, it will look like science fiction. However, at least there are one or two examples that suggest that this is feasible in preclinical animal models, and that carries quite a bit of promise as a concept. Now, to take it from a concept to be a product, a lot of development work has to happen, a lot of assessment of manufacturability has to take place. And if we are successful as a community, we are successful in making this happen, then you will see more and more of those biologic molecules taken via the oral route instead of the parenteral.
That's quite amazing, actually, when you think about what you're suggesting. And I had this vision of someone with a little remote control. You swallow the tablet, and they will direct it like a game to whichever part of the body it goes, and press a button, and the miniature injection will go in and administer the drug. That's what you start to visualize, don't you? So it's quite
absolutely.
It is very, very amazing.
And you can actually think about it even further. If we succeed in getting something with that level of sophistication and efficiency to work, you can start thinking about layering on the top of that components of sensing, remote sensing, sort of like measurements that transmit into a chip that will be on the shoulder of a patient to collect data around patient compliance. Did the patient really take the medication? Did the medication get released? How frequently did he get that type of medication? And you collect this information and you start collecting real-world data around patient compliance, patient behavior, tied to certain biological outcomes like changes in blood pressure or changes in glucose level. You start generating this enormous amount of data that informs the intervention for that particular patient, but also accelerate the development of the subsequent drugs afterwards. So there are multiple tiers or multiple layers of innovation that one can envision. It's a matter of, can we collectively as a research community push it forward?
I think there is another factor as well, though. It's not just the research community, but it's also getting public acceptance. I mean, if you just think about vaccines at the moment and the debate going on, rightly or wrongly, about whether you should take a vaccine or not if one gets discovered, then you can imagine the debate which would go on when, say, we're going to put a little mini chip into your, in your skin, which we can then monitor your drug administration. Libertarians, I'm sure, will go up in arms when they start talking about those sort of areas as well. So it's a very, very fascinating topic, actually, and I'm sure we could talk for hours about this as well. So, but if people want to know more about your or listen to you today at Oxford Global's event, what time is your presentation?
It's around 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which will be 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then they can do the calculation for Europe. I don't want to.
Don't worry.
I don't want to try to.
No, don't worry. I'll put the times into that. No, that's great. So if you are attending the formulation and delivery event from Oxford Global today, then I highly recommend you listening into Mohamed's presentation. It sounds fascinating, the whole topic. moving on, just talking about events as well, because obviously you are attending this
Sure.
event as a speaker. So as an end user, it'd be interesting to get your feedback on how has the lack of live events impacted you, and how have you found attending virtual events and the interaction you get at those sort of events?
So I had the opportunity earlier during the pandemic time to attend some of those virtual events. So I would say the key advantage is the accessibility to recorded presentations and associated files on my own time, sort of like on demand. So that's definitely an advantage compared to conventional events. However, I cannot deny that the lack of that human one on one interaction with your peers, with the speaker, and sort of like that kinetic energy where you bump into someone that you did not necessarily plan to meet,
Sure.
but out of that evolves an interesting conversation and a potential collaboration. That part is hard to replicate, at least for now, replicate in a virtual setting. So it's a trade-off. You are getting on-demand accessibility to the data and the information and the presentation out of those events, but you are trading that off or losing that one-on-one human connection and the kinetic probability of meeting someone that you did not intentionally plan to meet and the opportunities that can come with that. But I think virtual events are here to stay. And I think we will get into like life after the pandemic will not be the same. So I think we will get into a different kinetic equilibrium between virtual events and in-person events, and we'll see how it evolves over the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, well, as well, the term for that is hybrid events, as they're now calling it, actually. So you will have a
Yeah,
live event and a virtual event running concurrently, and obviously those people who can't make it live will use the virtual event as well. So it is an interesting thing, and I'm sure the event
absolutely.
organisers, as they get more used to technology out there and start to play about with and see what works and doesn't work, they will hopefully become a lot more interactive than they have been in the past. And I know this Oxford Global event is when I'm not just saying this, we're doing the interview for it, but actually I found it very good in terms of interaction. The platform they're using is very good. So all that's
Mhm.
left for me to say, Mohammed, is thank you very much, Jazakallah, for doing this. This is been really interesting to learn. I mean, it's a fascinating subject, actually. So thank you for taking time out to tell me more about it. I hope you as the viewers have found this interesting as well. Um, as I said, you can find out more if you're attending the event by checking out Mohammed's presentation today. If anyone did want to find more information about this particular topic, is there any other sources that you would recommend that they could turn to get more information?
I would say there are plenty of examples in the public domain in terms of literature, and I will provide a decent number of those examples in my presentation. Then they can start as a substrate for follow-up discussion, and I'll be more than happy during the presentation and afterwards to address any questions and engage in discussions as well.
Fantastic. And if you cannot make it, because you're not a delegate, obviously, at the Oxford Global event, then by all means, leave a comment for Mohammed below the video, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them. Or I'm sure you can message him as well, because he will be tagged on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So you'll be able to message him directly as well, and he'll be able to sort of come back to you and give you some more information as well. So all that's left for me is, Mohammed, thank you very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Uh, Thank you, everybody else, for watching. And as always, stay well and stay safe. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you as well. Bye bye, everyone.